Hello, I'm going to be explaining about the TI Nspire CX CAS calculator. It's truly an astounding calculator, and you'll surely be wowed with some of the things that it can do. So today I'm going to be recording using the emulator software. This keypad over here is exactly identical to what you'd see on the actual calculator, and this shows the screen in a much larger and more visible format. So first I'm going to talk about the basics. The truly basic operations are plus, minus, times, division. I'm sure you know what those are, and they don't need much of an explanation. It's just like 7 plus 3, enter, which is your equal sign, 10. Now, the first thing about the CAS is because it has a computer algebra system, it can keep everything completely exact all the time. It doesn't ever approximate anything unless you tell it to. So 7 divided by 8 stays as the fraction 7/8. Pretty cool, right? It can also do fractional addition. So 7/6 plus 4/5 is 49/30. It finds a common denominator automatically. Amazing. If you want to make a negative number, all you need to do is press the negative button, not to be confused with the minus sign. -5. -5. Easy. If you want scientific notation for a number that's really, really huge, or tiny, all you need to do is 45, and then press this capital small e button down here, and then -4. That means 45 times 10 to the -4th. It'll sometimes mess around with numbers in this area, but it's the same thing that you entered, just in a more simplified format. Exponentiation, also very easy. You can do like 5x squared, that adds an x squared to anything you pressed. Then you can do 4 caret symbol, and then anything you type up there becomes in the exponent. So like if you want to do 4 to the 5th plus 6. Now that's an easy mistake. If you don't press the arrow key, you'll stay typing in the exponent. If you press the arrow key, now you're back here. So 4 plus 6 equals 1/30, or 4 to the 5th plus 6 is 1/30. The only exception to the exponentiation rules is e to the x. So if you just type an e on the keyboard, that's the variable e. E to the 5th does not mean anything. You need to use this e to the x to get the bolded e, which is Euler's constant. If you approximate that, which is control enter to get the little approximate equal sign there, that actually approximates a value. Roots, simple, just control square root, control nth root, and of course it keeps things exact. And logarithms, ln is on this key, and log base n is on this key. If you don't type anything in there, you can tell because it's a little gray shaded box that you don't have to type things in there. Then log to the 10 to the 5th, it fills in a 10. Absolute values is sort of the odd man out with this. You actually have to type in abs. Abs of -6 is 6. It adds that later, but you need to use the function for that. So since it's a CAS version, you have a couple extra capabilities. You can do things with variables. So if you type a plus b, it stays as a plus b. If you type a over 4 plus 5 over 6, it can put them in common denominators if it had a reason to, such as if you knew the value of a. So if we assign it value to a with like 8, control var gives you the store arrow. If you type that, and then if you want to rerun that expression, all you have to do is press the arrow keys, the up arrow, until you get there. Now if you hit enter, you know a has a value because it's bolded, and now it will calculate that. If you press the var key, you can see all the variables that you have defined. You can also make multi-letter variables, like if you wanted to type like salt, and if we store a value in there, like 7, that maintains its value. So that way you aren't limited to just 26 variables. You can also do full symbolic equations, like 7x squared plus 4 And if you want, so you can also select text. Like if you type 45 and you're like, oh man, I want to square root that, what you do is shift back arrow, shift back arrow, and then control square root. Most of the time, if you enter a function that accepts like an inner value, it will put itself around what you have selected. You can also use that with keyboard shortcuts, which I'll show you later. And let's just go over some of the settings. So those are on the Dock button, Settings and Status, Document Settings. You can have different settings on each page. So in this case, display digits, let's say we want 4 decimal digits to be displayed. We hardly ever use decimals, so that'll make them take up less space. Angles, radians, degrees, gradients. So for math, we generally want radians set, exponential format, normal, real or complex. If we set it to real only, which is the default, then it will ignore all imaginary numbers and only return real results. If we set it to rectangular or polar, that will give you complex number results in that format. Calculation mode, if we do exact, that will force it to return exact results unless you press Control Enter. Auto will try to guess whether you want decimal or exact, or approximate will always give you a decimal. For math, we want exact. For physics, you generally want approximate. Vector format, we want those rectangular. Base, decimal. That's good. If you're programming, you might want to use those. Unit system, SI. And then since this is the scratch pad, we can only make default. Now, last, I'll tell you about a couple of pitfalls you can run into with this. So, first of all, the ANDS keyword. If you have something like 7 plus 4, if you do that, and then let's say you want to divide that by 2. So if you do divided by 2, if you just press the divided by sign with nothing before it, that will automatically insert the ANDS keyword, which represents the previous answer. If you do control minus sign, that is the same result. So let's say we do that. Now we get 11 halves. But oh man, we wanted that as an approximate value. So what you do is control enter. But you got to be careful. See, since we use the keyword ANDS, the 11 up there is not actually an 11, but an ANDS keyword camouflaged as an 11. When we redo that calculation, the ANDS keyword replaces itself with the most recent answer, which is 11 halves. So we get 11 over 2 over 2. We do not want that. So you cannot use the control enter method with anything that uses the ANDS keyword. So if you go up to 11 halves, and then hit control enter, that's the safe way. You get 5/5. So the next thing we need to talk about is managing files on the Nspire. So right here, you see we've been in this scratch pad. That's just the sort of simple calculator thing that you just press a button, call up, use it for temporary calculation. If you want to save your calculations into a more permanent place, or if you want to have different settings for one thing of calculations than the other, then you have to use files. They're just very convenient in general. So you can access files by just going to the home screen. The scratch pad is this button here. It has its own dedicated button. You go to the home screen, and then all you need to do is click on My Documents. You can see all of these things. And let's go back to the home screen. Let's create a new document. That's just new document. By the way, since you have that number there, anything with a number there means you can press that key to get to it. So in this case, we want to add a calculator. So let's press 1. We can also add another page for some graphing. So if you go to Document, Insert, Page, and then Add Graphs, now we have our own graphing calculator. So let's go over some more of the graphing stuff. Let's just type in a function to see how it graphs. Let's try 19x plus 6. You can see that just graphs as a straight line. And now if we want to graph another thing, we can press tab to get back up here and type, let's say, -2 and type, let's say, -2x squared plus 9. That gets us a nice little parabola. However, we cannot see the top of it. Let's fix that. So for that we need Menu, Window Zoom, Zoom Out. We click here, Let's say we wanted to find out the y value of the graph at a certain x. Maybe we just wanted to get a closer look at a certain part. First of all, let's zoom back in. Windows zoom, zoom in, and trace, graph trace. Of course, the shortcut. So now we can use the arrow keys to go through the graph as it changes value. And we can also use it to move through. It's a good way to look at a different part of the graph you're currently on. By pressing the up arrow and down arrow, we can switch between things. Now let's say we want to go to a specific x value. All we have to do is type it, like 4, enter. Now we go to x equals 4. 0, enter. Boom, x equals 0. So now what if we want to find where these intersect? That's pretty simple too. All you need to do is menu, analyze graph, intersection. And then you have to pick exactly where the two things intersect. We have to be a little careful because it's right next to the x-axis. So let's go, or the y-axis, let's go there. Now it found the intersection as 0.55, 8.95. So that point's going to stay there even after we get rid of these equations. So to get rid of it, you need to click on the point and then press Control Clear. Or rather Control Delete, which turns into clear. So now, what if we want to find the derivative at a certain point? That's easy too. All you need to do is go to Menu, Analyze Graph, dy over dx, click on the graph you want to find the derivative of, and then you can either pick the point with the cursor, or, which is a little easier, you can just type it. Let's say -1. So the derivative at -1 is 4. Exactly what we'd expect. To find the bounded area by a graph, known as an integral, though you might not know what that is at this point, there's also an analyze command for that. So all we need, let's get rid of that point with clicking on it, Control Clear, Menu, Analyze Graph, Integral. Then we click on the graph, pick our lower bound and upper bound, and boom! Now we can see the area as 5.4. Cool, right? So now let's say we want to get rid of all this stuff. We can't be bothered. Now normally you could go into Tab, then press like Control Delete to clear it. But that would take ages for we have 3 points, all this stuff on here. The easier way is Menu, Actions, Delete All. That will get rid of things even if you have them in other views where you can't easily get to them. Now we're zoomed way out, so let's go back with Windows Zoom, Zoom Standard. That puts us right back where we used to be, or right back in the center. Now, there are a couple other types of graphs you can do on here. So, we can do a piecewise graph. So, you want Tab, you click on the Templates button there, and we can get a piecewise graph. We just need to click on it to insert it. Like, so let's say 4x, and then you can access a less than by Control equals sign, and then press it, and then arrow keys to go through. Let's say x is less than 0, and then 5x is greater than 0. There, that generates a nice piecewise function. We can also do inequalities. So like Tab, if you press delete on this equal sign, it'll pop a menu of what you want instead of the equal sign. So if you want x is greater, and it turns f into a y, and then y is greater than x squared minus 8. That gets that. Cool, right? So then let's just get rid of that. Actions, delete all. I'll get rid of everything. And then the other cool thing you can do is different types of graphs. For example, if you go through graph entry edit, you can switch it to polar graphs. So if we want to do like a cardioid, that would be trigonometric functions on this slider. So like cosine of theta is on this button here. 4 cosine of theta plus 4. There, nice cardioid. Just switch it back to functions, which you do need to do. We want graph entry edit function, and then let's get rid of that cardioid, which would be pretty hard to get rid of otherwise, through actions, delete all, and cut. Now, let's go over some of the more advanced functions that the CAS can do in the calculator mode. To get back to calculator, all we need to do is control left arrow. That goes to the next left page. So, one of the other things you can do with the CAS is defining functions. You do that with the keyword define. F of x, by the way, variables and functions are case insensitive. So capital F, same as lowercase f, equals x plus 7. Now, when we type f of 5, that gets us 12. You can make pretty complicated functions like quadratic ones, rational ones. It doesn't care. You can also solve equations with the solve command. So if we go to menu, algebra, solve, the solve command does algebraic solving, just like you do when you get an equation from the teacher. So solve x plus 7 equals 4. So then since we want to solve for x, we do comma x. Now it finds the x value that would make x plus 7 4. You can also use solve with functions. By the way, you can type it in on the keyboard. That's the same as inserting it from the command menu. Depends how fast you are with the keyboard. So f of x equals 5, x equals -2. You can even define symbolic functions. So you can solve quadratics, like solve x squared plus 7x minus 8x, or no, you need equals 0, and it finds the values of x that would make that happen. I believe it can even find imaginary solutions if you want to. So since you have a CAS version, you can also solve symbolic equations, like solve a over x equals y, and then if we want to solve that for x, then it just rearranges that equation so one side is x. Amazing! This works with even really complicated stuff, like if we set x squared equals shift square root of y, it finds the possible values that could make that work. Even when doing that would be very difficult with regular algebra. Nspire also has trigonometric functions. So with this button, you can keep pressing that to scroll along them, or like cosine of 5. Since we're in exact mode, it generally keeps them as exact. The one exception would be if we did something like cosine of pi divided by 2, which does have an exact value, 0. Now, as you can see up there, we're operating in radian mode. If we wanted to do like cosine of 90 degrees, then you can do that while in radian mode. You just need to go over to the degree symbol there. The other ones, I believe, work the same way for if you're in degree mode, you can do it in radians and such. 90 degrees, cosine is 0. The most amazing feature it has is units. So we can press 3 to get over to the 3 tab, and first of all, it can convert between units using the conversion operator. Second of all, it has every physical constant known to physics built into the calculator. It tells you what they are and what the symbol is. Third of all, which is the most amazing thing, it can do dimensional analysis, like in physics. So if you were to type, say, 6 underscore newtons, which is a unit of force, control divided by 7 underscore m to the third, you would get a result in pascals. However, I accidentally did meters cubed. It should be meters squared. Now we get a result in pascals, which is a unit of pressure. It automatically converted it. And this highlights that you can use units to check your answers as well. Like when you're doing particle motion problem, you can carry units all throughout your problems. It will even convert units to you if you enter them in a different unit, like if you do like days times minutes or something, it will convert it. It will also block, like if I do 7 underscore meters plus 8 underscore kilograms, it doesn't let me do that. But if I do 7 meters plus 8 centimeters, it automatically converts 8 centimeters to meters. Amazing. If you want to get an underscore to type in units, the keyboard shortcut for that is Control Space. So the last thing I'm going to teach you about is calculus concepts. So one of the things Nspire can do is evaluate limits exactly. It doesn't just beat around the bush by running the numbers and seeing when it gets close to. It'll use the CAS system to find them exactly. So if we do as x approaches 5 of x squared control divided by 7x, it finds that exactly as 5/7. It can ignore holes, like if we were to put x equals 0, that finds it correctly as 0. It also handles properly undefined limits. So if we go in here and limit as, like, let's say c approaches 0 of 1 over c, that's undefined. But if we make it a one-sided limit by typing into that little gray box it's hard to see there, which you don't have to type into, then it's able to actually find it as infinity. Minus signs work too. We can also find limits at infinity. So if we go over to new limit as r approaches, and then we get an infinity by clicking the pi button, scrolling over to infinity, enter of, let's say, r squared divided by 7r squared, then it finds that correctly as 1/7. Same dealio for negative infinity. We can also find derivatives at a point, like any other graphing calculator. So all we need to do is click the derivative button there, and d over dx of, let's say, 5x to the third minus 8x. And then in order to specify the point, you do Control equal sign, and then use the arrow keys to move over to this vertical bar. That is not an absolute value symbol. That's telling it where to find the derivative. So x equals 4. That found the derivative at 4. But why would we do that when we can find the derivative at every point by getting rid of that portion and hitting enter? Now, whenever we plug in x, we get the symbolic derivative. If we want to take the second derivative, say, all you need to do is scroll over to d squared. So if we do d over, like, dr of r to the 7th, that finds the second derivative of r to the 7th. So finally, the calculator can also do operations with matrices. So you can access those through the symbol key here. So let's say you want to multiply two matrices by each other. So let's just do 3, 4, 1, 2, 4 times, insert another matrix, 1, 0, 0, 1. And that does matrix multiplication. Oh yeah, and one more thing, keyboard shortcuts. There's amazing shortcuts in here. One of them is Control Z. It undoes whatever you just did. And then Control Y redoes it. If you want to select everything, that's Control A. And if you want to copy something you've selected, like Control C, Control V, Control X, Control V. They made the keyboard shortcuts work exactly like shortcuts on a word processor on a computer. And then you want to save, that's just Control S. That will ask you exactly where you want to save it. In this, let's just do like test. That will save it as test. The file explorer looks different because it's the emulator. And then Control N creates a new document. Alright, so that's basically all I have to say about the TI Nspire today. I hope you learned something.